In this video for statistics tutorial using Excel, I'm going to show you how to create a frequency distribution and then use that frequency distribution to construct a histogram. In the previous video, I showed you how to use just the charts area and create the histogram and make changes to it. So this time we're going to look at a different method for going through and doing that, and we're going to use a pivot table in order to construct the frequency table before we construct the histogram. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with selecting all of the data, including the variable name at the top of the data set right here. And then I'll go over to the insert area, and we're going to look at the table options that are listed here. And specifically, we're going to choose the pivot table. So you're going to go ahead and click on that. That'll open up a dialog box. You can see in the table/range option right here, since I already selected the data, is selected those cells automatically for me. And something that I'm going to do that's a little bit different from previous videos is I'm going to choose to have all of this information go to a new workbook. So I'm going to leave that selected right there, and then I'll just go ahead and click OK. Once I do that, you'll see it creates a new sheet at the bottom, and then it gives an area for this pivot table that we're going to create from cells A3 all the way down to A20 and then through column C. Over on the right is how we edit the fields of the pivot table. So the variable days is given in the fields that are available right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the variable days and left click that and drag and drop it into the rows area. Once you go ahead and do that, you can see that it took our data and rearranged it. It has all the values in there. The next thing that we want to do is we want to give it another column that's going to be the frequency. Technically, it's going to give the sum initially. You can see that there was potentially 112, 113, but there were two values of the 14 right there. We're going to change that so we get the count of the information. So you're going to go to this area right here where it says sum of days and go down to the pull down right here, and then just choose the value field settings option at the bottom. When you do that, that's going to open up a dialog box, and it gives us the options of what we have available for selecting things. And we're going to change that from sum to count, and then we'll say OK. So now what it does is it builds a frequency table without class intervals. It looks at every individual value and counts up the number of occurrence of those values. So you can see the value 12 occurred once, the value of 14 occurred twice, so on and so forth when you look through the table. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to group this data so it's a little bit better in terms of that frequency table. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click somewhere in this white body right here. And when we do this, we have a bunch more options that come up. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down to this group option right here. So we'll go ahead and choose group, left mouse click to do that. And it's going to ask us what our start value is. Our minimum value is 12. We could start with that, but I'm going to choose to start with 10 for this. And then our ending value, our largest value is 33, and I'm going to choose 34, so something just beyond that. And then the last thing that we can do is we can go down here to the by, and we can choose how wide we want that group to be. So we want this to go by increments of 5, and then we'll go ahead and say OK. And then it's going to take this pivot table and it's going to regroup it. So right here it gives us the range of values in this class interval, and then it gives us the count of those values over here, also known as the frequency. So once we have that, we have our frequency table completed. Now let's go ahead and create a histogram using the frequency table. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go ahead and select everything within the cell, not any of the blue that's on the outside of the cell, but the class intervals that we have on the left, and then the count of days that we have on the right. And this time I'm going to go up to insert, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to choose recommended charts. Now you're going to notice, like, we want to do a histogram, but when we go down to histogram, it may or may not give us that option. You can see that the OK is blocked out. What it really wants to do is it wants to create a column graph, and I don't really feel like this is the correct graph for it, because what it's basically doing is treating this range of values of the class intervals like it's categorical data when it does that, essentially. But it'll work as a histogram. It'll just create it a little bit differently. So once you have those values selected and you have your column graph selected, you're just going to say OK, and then that's going to go ahead and generate your histogram similar to what we had before. And again, there are those options. If you need to change anything on here, you can go into the chart elements and open that up. And remember, you hover over, for example, the axes, and you can click the right arrow right there, and you can choose other options. Same thing with the chart title, the grid lines, and everything else. So go ahead and play around with this and see how you do with constructing a frequency table or frequency distribution and a histogram using Excel.